Lifting Leaders podcast, where we're unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Tricia Ryan, and together with Crystal Roberts, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we are exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now. Happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary.
Happy podcast anniversary.
I'm so excited. It is our 3-year anniversary.
Yes, ma'am. And we have gotten through 131 episodes.
Yeah.
Weekly.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so proud of us. I am. And listeners, we just have to be proud of ourselves here a little bit because in the world of podcasting, there are very few podcasts that go this far.
Yeah.
We have gotten 131 episodes and we have so many more to come, right?
Yeah. Great stuff coming.
Very few make it past the first 15 episodes. So we rock.
Yeah. Yeah. So high five to us.
Yes, ma'am.
High five to our listeners.
Yes.
Thanks for being here.
I'm high-fiving you.
and we're just enjoy.
Yeah.
Enjoy. And
thank you for being with us, and thank you for bringing us along. We appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you. Enjoy episode 131.
Hi, Crystal. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I would love for spring to really start springing, you know?
Yep.
I know it's only like, hours old, but I don't care.
Well, and I think a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this false spring.
Yes.
And they were right. It was a false spring. We've had hail. We've had freezing temperatures, literally. And it's like
thunder and lightning and you name it, and wind. Oh, my word. I know. I always go crazy about wind because I have trees and I always worry about them toppling over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every time we get a windstorm or they start talking about it, I get anxiety because I start thinking what happens. I've had a few trees fall over the years, and I worry so much that one's going to fall on my house or one of my neighbors' houses. So, you know, I know I'm not the only person with trees, but it is something to think about when you live in a woodsy area, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I'm ready for spring. I noticed that there are some buds out there.
Yeah. Oh,
cool.
Yeah, the cherry trees are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all looking forward to spring. It's just been such a crazy time in the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll just let people know too, I'm feeling a little bit low. I had a loss of a family member just recently, and it's in my extended family. So not any of the kids that I've been talking about. So, but I do, I can feel it impacting me today.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping people can give me a little bit of grace as we go through our podcast today.
I think we're gonna all give you grace because that's, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's an extended family or not. You know, it throws us into our own thoughts and how we process things like that. And, you know, it kind of in a way goes with what we're talking about today too. We're going to be talking about values. Yeah. Right. And it's such an important topic, and especially right now, I think, you know, there's so many things going on in the world that we can't make sense of. Yeah. And I think that when we can't make sense of something, when I can't make sense of something, the first thing I want to do is touch on my values and say, where does this align somewhere, or where is it not aligning that I need to be mindful of, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, I know for myself, I'm walking around with this pit in my stomach. Mm-hmm. And I know when things are not aligned, when things are happening around me that are not aligned with my values, I feel it in my body. And I oftentimes feel it like in the pit of my stomach.
You know, you say that, and that has been what I've always called my values are my gut feelings, right? Yeah. And whenever I've made a decision that was not in alignment with my values in my life, it has always gone wrong. Always. Yeah. And I've always felt it in my gut. Yeah. And so it's interesting that now that I understand that, I try never to make decisions until I've had time to check my thinking and check the way I feel about it. And I've been making some pretty good decisions lately. I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's important.
It's that art of the pause, right? To be able to, instead of just react, to actually pause and say, how is this showing up in my body?
Right.
And that may be because it's either in alignment or not in alignment with our values. And so I am happy that we're talking about this topic. I think it's really relevant, and really is another one of those ways to thrive in 25.
Yes, it is.
And to also help those around us to thrive. And we can have some really important conversations when we use values.
Yeah, in fact, I think that now is a perfect time for people to take a look at their values. And often, it's not something you do once in your lifetime and it's over, because there's so many reasons why, you want to touch on your values just to make sure they're still working, right?
Yeah.
And so let's talk about this article that you pulled, which is an awesome article, by the way.
And I wanted to give a definition, which actually wasn't in the article, but I just did a Google search, and Oxford Language came up, and they said a value is a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. And I like that because it's just straightforward, right? And that is really what it's about. It can be kind of a complex thing when we look at all the different layers, but essentially it's about what's important in our life.
Yes, I consider my values to be the foundation upon which everything I do and everything I think is set.
Yeah.
So every time I have ever written values or worked on values in an organization, when they wanted a visual, they wanted that to be the foundation. So then you'd put pillars in and, and a roof and all those things to make a visual. So I have a lot of those from different companies, but they always put the values at the bottom because that's what we stand on, right?
Yeah.
And I think that in a corporation, that's pretty amazing that if they are willing to put them down as the foundation and stand on that, that's a pretty cool organization most of the time.
I remember when we went and visited the Gates Foundation several years ago, and they literally had it etched in stone, and it was part of the foundation of the building. And I thought that was so cool.
It was cool. In fact, there were so many things about that building that screamed values, right? Yeah. Everything that they believe in, you'd find it on the risers of every step. You'd find it in the footsteps that were printed in the floor. It was very much an organization that stands on its values. And you could tell by the way people act, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And bedrock. I mean, literally bedrock foundations are, I think what's interesting when we think about values and personal values, that oftentimes they come from our childhood.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that this article was talking about, is when we start to define what our values are, that's one place to start, is to look, what were the values when I was growing up? What were the values that my parents were instilling in us? And then to be able to say, well, what are they now? Because they do shift over time.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
When was the first time that you really consciously thought about your values as an adult? And do you remember the setting that caused you to do that?
I'm terrible with those kind of questions to be able to.
I want a date and the time of the day.
To look back. I'm such a, I don't know, my history is not deep in my brain, or it is deep in my brain, hard to pull out. But I know one of the ones that comes to mind is testing around family. So I know that when I had a family, that when I had my first kids, those sort of things were very prominent, being able to get home in time and stay home when they were sick and that sort of thing. So I remember my value around family being tested. Yeah.
The reason I ask the question is that I think so often we don't visit our values.
Yeah.
A lot of people, you and I used to teach a class that included a module on values. And I remember watching a lot of blank faces when we asked people to, jot down your values for a moment, and they weren't sure what values they should be writing down because they really hadn't thought about it much.
Yeah.
And that to me was just so interesting, a real aha about, how we as adults run through life. We're getting so busy, we hardly have any time to think straight, let alone eat well and get exercise and all of that stuff. And our values are just something that, you hope it's foundation, but, do you really think about it? That deep dive into your values can be so critically important, especially if you have to make really hard decisions and you have to go back and see, am I doing the right thing? Am I walking the path that I want to walk? Is it in alignment with the way I was raised, right?
Yeah.
Because our values, to your point earlier, there's something that we are brought into this world, and our parents start imparting their values on us, right?
Yeah.
People don't often, they think, oh, these are my values. Well, are they? Were they mom and dad's values, perhaps? Mm-hmm. And do they still work for you? Yeah. To your other point, they're not necessarily forever, right?
Yeah.
What changes that?
Yeah.
Our experiences in life, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And also thinking about that values, while they shift over time, there's probably some that stay core.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's good too, mm-hmm. right? And how, thinking about how are they impacted also by our society that we live in. So
yes,
we clearly, our society, our cultures, they have values as well. Mm-hmm. And so thinking about how do my personal values align with those, what happens when they rub up against that or in conflict.
I was talking to a woman from Croatia just recently, and she was missing her home, and her family, they're all somewhere else. She has family members who actually live in the Ukraine, and she often doesn't know where they are or what's going on with them. And we were just talking about, what keeps you standing, what keeps you staying the course, because it's got to be hard. It's very heavy lift for her. And she said that her foundation, the people that she grew up with and her grandparents and her great-grandparents and everybody had values that have worked their way down through the generations. And she said, it's only 4. But it's the 4. And I said, do you have other values? And she said, oh, yeah, I have other values, but those are the 4 that I never lose sight of. Mm. And that's what keeps her going, given that she's away from her family. And I thought, we're not alone. It's not an American thing to have values. It's a global thing. Everybody has them. And in some places where there are tribes, the values are everything. Yeah. That is your law almost, right? Yeah. So it's an important thing, and I'm glad we're talking about it. I really am, because right now I've been feeling tested a lot lately, about my values. And so
I think the other thing with that is when we're clear about it and we can articulate it, we can have a different conversation with people when we are in conflict with them.
Yes.
Because a lot of times when we get down to those fundamentals, we do share that in common with other people. And so when we think about things like family and truth and collaboration and serving others and things like that, oftentimes we can see that there's actually, when we get to that level, commonality. And so that gives us building blocks for having a conversation about. We may vary on how we sort of the behaviors around that or how we express it. But at least if we can share that commonality, we have some place to start a conversation.
And isn't that in alignment with what we heard Jeff McAuliffe talking about with his neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And you're building your community. You don't all have to have the same values, but you probably have a lot of common ones. And so it's that conversation and learning about each other and testing the way you feel about different things with each other that helps you understand the people you live around and builds your community so that you have a better sense of, they know where I'm coming from. They know how I make my decisions or what's important to me. I know where they're coming from too. And so I can respect that, and I think is something that's missing a lot right now is that not having that common conversation at all, about what do we know that we both believe in, and what are the things that we don't believe in, but why? What is it about our values that makes us feel the way we do, and how can I respect you because I want to hear your side of it, right?
Yeah.
And often if you're not having that connection, you could start with values.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true. We also know that getting clarity around your values really helps to increase your happiness.
Yes.
Because you can actually figure out what's making you unhappy. Mm-hmm. And it's usually that conflict with your values. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, because even with a set of values, you can have conflict within those values. Like what's at play in this situation? And in another situation, something else might be more important to come up.
And then it's choice, right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes choice. I was thinking, and I was telling you before we did this today, that I left a company because the organization had gone through several mergers and acquisitions over maybe about a 8 or 9 year period. And I had ridden the wave, like everybody else did. But at some point I realized that I was coming into the office every day and almost immediately started feeling tense, or I started getting depressed, or I felt like my stomach or my shoulders were in knots by the end of the day. And I was thinking, what in the world? I felt this sense of, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And that is not the way I like to operate. I felt like I was reactive all the time.
Yeah.
And at some point, the new owners of the organization decided to put their values up. They never talked to us about them. They just put them up on the wall, and they were now our values. And most of us came from an organization, at least in my office, we all had belonged to the same organization that originally was very focused on our customer and talking about what was right for the community and how we would work with them. And I mean, it was just very much more of a family feel, right? So when I saw the values, and I went back to my desk and I wrote down my values, and I looked at the values that were up on the wall, and I'm not even kidding, I couldn't find one that was in alignment with mine, not one.
Yeah.
And they were getting ready about 2 months later to offer a buyout, and I only wanted to stick out for the buyout. I stuck around for the buyout, but I was absolutely in my head mentally out to lunch.
Yeah.
Because once I realized that I had no connection with my values and theirs, I couldn't see how I could add value.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know how I can add value if this is what you think is important.
Yeah.
And it's nothing like what I think is important.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people often, and I don't think it's everybody, but I think a lot of people don't like their job, or they find that they're going in and they're not happy in their job. And often, if they just were to sit down and say, what are my values? And where are they in this organization?
Yeah.
Where do they stand or align with this organization's values? If you're not at least finding one or two, you may be in the wrong place again.
Yeah.
And that's why, part of what you said is values change over time. Mm-hmm. Our experiences cause that.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good. I look at my values every year now. It's like an annual deal. It's almost like a birthday. It's your birthday. Let's look at our values.
Yeah.
But I do it, or if I'm unhappy, and then all of a sudden it throws me right back into it.
Yeah.
So I had to do it last year for a really awful reason, right? But it was a painful process.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did it, because I found the ones that are never going to change.
Yeah.
And I found a couple that I just didn't need to hold on to anymore.
Yeah.
More information than you wanted to know, but
Well,
there you go.
I think it's a great example. I also think when you're looking at your values versus company values, so kind of looking at it in a career sense, that what we find on the wall of organizations as their values isn't necessarily what's being lived out.
Right. That's
Yeah. And so that's important to look at too. It's like, oh yeah, I might find that there's some commonality between my values and the company's stated values. But when you look at their actions and what they're
Yes.
actually doing, they aren't in alignment with those values.
Right.
And so I just feel like it's important to say that, because sometimes it can feel a little crazy. It's like, well, I joined this organization because they look like they had great values and they're in this nice, shiny, framed portrait on the wall
Right.
at the front door. But gosh, all these things that they're doing seem to counter what their stated values are. So it's important to say, yeah, maybe it's not what I thought it was going to be.
It goes back to what you said in the beginning about, principles that guide our behaviors and actions and things and decisions. It's true.
Yeah.
You're right. When they say that customer comes first and you're not seeing them put any emphasis on the customer,
Yeah.
then you know that something is miss, right?
Yeah.
And you need to
Or the
do something about it.
finances are over, making money ends up being the most important thing, right? We're not going to
Yeah.
treat our customers well. Or it could be that we say employees are first, but then we're not putting our employees first.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to walk those values, live those values is what's most important.
It's most important, and on a personal level, it's not always easy.
Yeah.
It's that it takes courage. It takes sometimes tenacity. It definitely takes resilience to hold the line on your values. It may be easy if you're with people who don't necessarily espouse their own values, to let go of your own for a while because it's fun, or you're doing something that at the moment seems like it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But down the line, you may not be so happy about it, and you're probably almost always going to eventually return to your values because something's not going to feel right. To your point, it's your gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm feeling better already that I got a chance to say that. But I am concerned about the values thing going on right now. I want people to be visiting their values. I really hope that our listeners will, sit down and just write out the, 3 to 5. We used to do an exercise, like a card sort.
Yeah. You had an interesting idea, I thought, which was, and of course, when I work with clients, I have a card deck that I have them use, but is just to sort of look through magazines and things like that and cut out words that seem to represent your values. And then, you make your own card deck essentially, and then mix them up, get 50 words and then get them down to 15. And then what are my top 5 and maybe even my top 3? And how am I living those values? And how might I not be living those values?
And the thing you do in that exercise is you actually have to sit down and look at those words and say, okay, I picked this word.
Yeah.
Why did I pick this word?
Yeah.
What was important inside me that I had this word?
Yeah.
Is it important enough for me to keep it in the keep pile, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to find that if you've got like 50 words or 40 words or however many, a lot, right? Most of them are going to go off the wayside because it would be impossible to be that perfect in the world where every one of those words was a value that you hold dear. It would be hard to live it, right?
Yeah. And they, like you said, they are all important. All those words are important. But when it comes, kind of push comes to shove, what are you going to pick as the most important thing? What are you going to choose? Yeah.
I consider those my tool belt, the tools in my tool belt. The ones that I go to all the time, the ones that I rely on the most, those are in my tool belt.
Yeah.
The others are in my toolbox. And if I need to pull them out, I will go and look for the right thing. It's kind of like you go in, there's all these screwdrivers and all that stuff, or you're looking for the right the right nail, and there's like 5,000 nails in there, and they're all different sizes and shapes, right? And you got to go rummaging through. Well, that's sort of what is those words are in your toolbox. But the ones in my tool belt, the ones that I go to most often, the ones I just have to reach down and pull it out, those are the ones that mean the most to me. Those are those 3 to 5 that I hold dear.
Yeah. Right. So we would encourage people. I know when I work with my clients, one of the things that they find really fun about it is, one, to do it for yourself, of course, but then have other people around you also do it and have a conversation about that.
Yes, that's great.
Like, what are your values, and why did you pick those, and when have you seen those show up in your life, and when have you really fought for these values? And you might even find out that maybe this is why I've got that pit in my stomach, is because I'm having to live in a way for whatever reason and whatever time that is not in alignment with those values. And what can I do? What's one small thing I can do to move in the direction of being able to align my values with the way I live my life?
So while this is a critically important step you take on a regular basis in your life, don't make it so heavy and important that you don't feel good if you're not doing it. Do it when it feels right. Do it when you feel like you have the time and the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth to do it. Because if it's not going to be something you enjoy, you're not going to get much out of it. Just, go in and say, I really, really wish I knew. You could even do it as a game around the coffee table or the table at home with your family, right?
Yeah.
And
pop some popcorn. Enjoy the conversation.
It might be a really cool conversation if you do have kids to find out what they've taken from you so far and why it's important to them. Because remember, parents are the ones who put their values on their children, and then their children test it over time, and they keep the ones that work for them. Right? So at whatever age, a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old might have already decided there are certain values that they don't really use, or they don't have much use for, or they might have some that are so important that they can't move forward without them, right? Be kind of fun to find out.
I want to do this. I'm inspired.
You gonna take your kids back to when they were young?
I'm gonna have them do the card sort that I have, and then, but I like the distinction to say, okay, what were the values that you saw us impart in you, or try to impart in you when you were growing up, and what are your values now?
Because which ones did you keep? Which ones did you let go of? Because there's no judgment, right? No judgment here.
No.
If my values don't have to be somebody else's values, but it'd be interesting to find out which ones that I held on to and I thought were so important, right? Ended up not really being that important at all. Right? It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I would love to be able to hear that from them. What did they think we were trying to teach them?
You know what? That sounds like a Thanksgiving dinner table game that you guys always do.
Or maybe family camp.
There you go. Yeah. Family camp would be perfect.
Yeah. So we hope you can have some fun with that. And that it might also help you navigate this really challenging time in our lives.
We got to thrive in 25, right?
Thrive in 25.
How are we going to do that with our values, right?
Yeah. And they can take it to their teams too. I think it's also a great conversation with teams.
Absolutely. So let's keep that conversation going, shall we? If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders.
I have to break in here for just a second.
Yeah.
So we have moved.
Yes, we have.
We've moved to a new platform. We're on Podbean, but now we are on a lot of different platforms. And we are also on a different Apple address, as well as a different Spotify address.
Okay.
So I am going to drop this episode on our old platform to help people find us on the new platform.
Okay.
So I'm asking people to make sure that you're listening to Lifting Leaders Podcast. You need all three words, Lifting Leaders Podcast. If you are listening on just Lifting Leaders, and if you have not heard episodes for the last month, any new episodes, it means you're on the old podcast platform. And we are going to be shutting that down. And so please move over. And we'd love to see those numbers fly up so that we know that you made it onto our new platform.
Thank you for saying that. I'm not going to even say the next line because actually it's all about, wherever you listen. And now we have so many more options. And I think in the next few weeks, we'll probably list some of those for you so that you can hear where
pretty much anywhere, anywhere that you are looking at podcasts, you can find us. Yeah.
But if you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them, text them, email them, and take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds and follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because you never miss an episode. To follow us, go to the Lifting Leaders Podcast show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen on a whole bunch more places. Then just tap the plus sign at the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and review and share the episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful. Crystal, thank you for hanging today. I know you had a lot of challenges going on, but this was wonderful.
It's always good to be with you and to be with our listeners.
Thank you. Many thanks to you, our listeners. We appreciate you so much. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Have a great week.
Bye.